All right, here we go. The dreaded Star Wars The Last Jedi conversation. Because since it debuted, since our last episode, we've seen it and the rest of the world has seen it because it did blockbuster numbers on Thursday. And
most of the world, except for the world that's involved in this filming.
That's true, because we have a lot of the people that are here tonight hanging outside the shop right now because we don't want to spoil it for them.
No, because it's cold and we want them to freeze to death.
So, it's caused a lot of controversy.
Yes.
Since it debuted last week. And we don't want to spoil it for people, so they're outside. But we want to talk on it. And
first, spoiler alert.
A lot of opinions.
Spoiler.
Yeah.
Spoiler.
And that's why we sit them outside, because we don't want to spoil it. Sure. But for me, real quick, I don't love it. I don't hate it. It's what I tweeted out. There was a lot of great moments, but there was also some moments that were like what?
Yeah.
Where I thought they were going to go a certain way after The Force Awakens. So I'm going to say my opinion because I really want you guys, because I think you guys kind of have some contrasting opinions. And I'm going to let it flow from there real quick and before we bring everybody in. So let's go see why. Let's throw it off with you.
I thought you said you were going to give me your opinion and then I was going to contrast off it.
I'm going to contrast. Since I'm running the show, I'm going to go ahead.
All right, so either way.
See why I started off.
So,
initial review.
It's a good movie. I don't think it's the best Star Wars movie. I think it's an issue of...
And I thought it was a very Star Wars movie. But go ahead. Interject.
It had good parts, but for example, the humor was in the wrong places. The Star Wars is best when it has humor, but it also needs to not be a parody of itself. I think Last Jedi compares more closely to Spaceballs than it does any of the other Star Wars films. The opening bit with Poe Dameron's, putting the general on hold thing, that was straight out of Spaceballs. That was not the way to open a Star Wars film.
I give you that.
And unfortunately, even if that was the worst of it, it's how it opens the film and it sets the tone and it gets your expectations in that area. It was a bad way to open the film, in my opinion, just because it was tonally different from everything else that we've seen in Star Wars. It didn't have any of the, like I said, Star Wars has humor, but it's situational humor. It's humor from within the universe, not from outside the universe imposing itself on it. The whole call waiting scheme is not something you would expect from military professionals in Star Wars, for lack of better words.
You're using the word Poe and professional in the same sentence. You need to stop that.
Well, yeah, it gets to the other point is the entire Poe Dameron plot in that film is pointless. It goes nowhere.
From what I read, a lot of people felt they turned him into an asshole. They turned him
into an asshole for the sake of whatever the hell they were trying to do.
Yeah.
I have a lot of problems with the way that the space battles were handled. Just I'm kind of a naval historian. I'm kind of not an expert, but I'm into that kind of stuff. And a lot of the stuff that they did just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense with the established way the technology in Star Wars works previously. Mm-hmm. They didn't really quite explain how the ship was being tracked. It's just some kind of godlike GPS system.
I believe it was a flux capacitor.
But
through light speed. Never done before, but they can actually be tracked through light speed. Just wanted to interject that nugget.
Yeah, and it's also been pointed out that apparently they put an Easter egg to that in Rogue One, where one of the secret projects that Jyn Erso is going through when she pulls up the Death Star plans is one saying hyperspace tracking. That's fine. They didn't do any narrative linking to that in the actual film, though. Mm. And previously, if you wanted to track someone through hyperspace, you had to have a beacon on the ship. So whenever they were talking about, they're following the ship, I was expecting okay, we need to find the thing that they put on the ship to track it, because that's how they've done it in all the previous canon. Instead, they just come out of nowhere. Oh, by the way, we have a super device on the ship. It's tracking you. We're not going to tell you anything about it.
Active tracking.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the biggest thing. Was just but I understand that you could find us when we land, but now you're following us on the road. And so, I feel like there's a lot that needs to be explained between Return of the Jedi and Force Awakens that would settle all of this. I feel like that 30 to 40 year gap, there's so much information that's taking place in there involving, the rise of the First Order, the evolution of technology, the introduction of Snoke, and
that's the other big thing is there's very little connective tissue between the Empire and the First Order, other than the fact that they look exactly alike, they have the same goals, they're dark side Force users, they're reading from the same script practically, but who's Snoke? Where does he come from? Where did all this shit come from? I thought you beat the Empire, but everyone was there's no explanation of where the hell this came from.
Yeah.
It would be one thing if they said, oh, it is the Empire, the Imperial Remnant. They were not soundly defeated. They were retreated. But instead they're trying to pretend it's some kind of successor state. Like, they went to, like, none of it makes any real sense, and they don't go to any effort to explain any of it.
And when your bridging material is a critically hated video game, and that bridging material doesn't
And critically hated books, too.
Yeah.
They've tried putting out books, and resoundedly, the fandom has not been in favor.
Referring to Battlefront?
Yeah, he's talking about Battlefront. I'm talking about the Aftermath books.
Yeah,
Okay.
the really bad books that they put out to what was it, the Journey to Force Awakens stuff that
it's
people were like,
called
what?
Aftermath.
Yeah, what is this crap? I mean,
It's written by an author who's just, his writing style
You
is
think that was the
horrible.
intention for the super fans? Is that
well, that
by
was
putting those
their
out?
that was their intention, was to be like, all right, we're going to rehash this universe. That's why they threw everything out and then said, wait, no, it's Star Wars Legend, not trash now, because there's truth in Legend, as everybody knows.
And also, those books are still selling.
Well, yes, because they're well written.
Exactly.
They're passion projects. They're something that somebody was like, I just want to tell a really cool Star Wars story. It wasn't somebody that was like, here's your paycheck. No, you need a bridge A to C, so you write B.
And here's our focus-tested hits that you have to hit during the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that in
Yeah, I enjoyed the movie overall, but I do agree that there was a couple things, but I have gotten to the point to where I just go with just to be entertained. And I do see that there were some glaring plot points, but at the same time, like I said, it's not that they just didn't touch on it. So there's room for them to actually explain themselves later.
I was able to enjoy it. I was able to enjoy Force Awakens, but it doesn't mean I'd come back out of it and just not be able to be critical of it.
Oh, no, that's
kind
right.
of who I am as a person. I can critique almost anything.
Oh, hey.
CY would be CY.
But yeah, it's just
I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. And so, you know what? You hit the nail on the head on quite a few things. It's like they gave a big FU to like the stuff that came before. Like
the other big plot point
Really?
that just didn't make any sense to me is they evacuate the cruiser onto those little shuttle transports, and they're getting away with it because they're too small to be noticed. And then somehow the code breaker from Canto Bight shows up and rats out the
That
evacuation
stuttering
transports
prick.
that he didn't know about.
Benicio del Toro.
Well, hey, there were scenes where they weren't around, so I agree. This is once
But
again.
he didn't know about it because Rose and Finn didn't know about it because they weren't on the ship and they had nothing to do with that, because
But-
the entire reason they were on that mission is because they didn't know about those transports.
So many
Yes.
holes.
Well, so here's actually the drain cover to that hole. There's that one little scene you have when Finn is racing back and he's talking to Poe and he's like, "We'll be there any minute," and then the camera cuts. We don't know if that was the end of the conversation.
But
That could have
it's-
been like Poe saying, "Guys, you need to hurry up and get back. This is what this dumb broad's doing," and then the code breaker's sitting there just going,
We shouldn't have to make up excuses
No, you're
for
right.
things that the movie
You're right.
didn't.
That was probably something where it was left on the cutting room floor. Yeah. Which I think that was my overall thing, is I felt like they tried to tell too big of a story.
Yeah.
And some of that too big of a story is just throwing in useless side stories. But at the same time, the overall theme of this movie was failure. And that's what they just kept hitting us over the head with. Hey, look at these guys fail. Which, I mean, that's reminiscent of Empire, too. So it's just...
I think that was what left a lot of people.
And that's also what the
Flat
director, I know,
at the
was
end
he
of the
was like,
film.
he wanted to he did kind of want to throw mud in the tradition of Star Wars, of like, the brash hero that just runs in shooting doesn't always work.
So I'm fine with Poe not having a crazy plan that single-handedly saves the Resistance and all that stuff. It could have been handled better than it did.
Yeah. And they also missed an opportunity for him to say, "Don't tell me the odds."
Yeah. There was no, I have a bad feeling about this. This is the first Star Wars movie without that.
Yeah.
That's...
I mean, but just like that scene with 3PO telling him, just it was a perfect opportunity for somebody to say something. And that's the kind of fan service we need in Star Wars. That's it.
The handling of Luke.
I liked the training sequences. I liked the backstory. I liked...
And the Rey origin, all of that.
I'm fine with all that. But then when we get to the end of the movie... I liked that he faked them out with the force projection. I don't get where he suddenly dies. Like, there's no real explanation.
Gianno, I told you to leave.
There's no real explanation for that. There's no real justification for it. He does this Jedi thing.
Yeah.
He's fine. He looks at the sunset, and then his cloak fades. And like,
The only theory I've heard on that is that what he did was so intensive on his body that it literally drained him of all his energy. And that the concept of becoming one with the Force is literally just that.
That's the conclusion you can draw from inference, but there's no groundwork for it in the movie. There's no discussion like.
Well, I mean, just like
how hard would it have been to put in a 2-minute sequence during the film with him talking to Rey? Oh yeah, you can do all these fantastic, impressive, massive, over-the-top things with the Force, but there's a cost, or something to justify this happens. Because in the meantime, the entire franchise is built on these Force-sensitive characters doing these insane feats with very little after effect. In this movie, you have Leia die in space and then reach out her hand and pull herself back into the ship. Yeah, I mean that's another.
I'd rather that than her death scene.
Honestly, that's another issue that I have with them getting rid of Luke, is that they've kind of written themselves into a corner where it was very obvious that their intention was to have Leia being that last remaining root to the original trilogy. She can't do it. Unfortunately, unfortunately, Carrie Fisher is dead.
Yeah.
And now we know the one thing we know about Episode 9 is that Leia's not going to be in it. There's no way they can do it. They've also gotten rid of Luke. They had a missed opportunity. I don't know how many people were so dead certain that when they talked about going to that casino to find a Master Code Slicer, everyone was expecting to see Billy D. Williams.
Yeah.
So they missed out on that opportunity.
But also how corny was that threw off to me, also momentum in the film as well.
Well, that whole, this goes back to what I was saying earlier. The whole sequence with going to that planet and the cruiser running away, that I felt, it became the focus of the film, and if anything, it should have been a C-plot. Like, it was way too much focus on it, way too much effort put into it, and it ultimately accomplishes absolutely nothing.
No, the only thing it accomplished was, hey, it was trying to be a reference to the Mos Eisley, which, I mean, they should have... I feel like they should have had, like, a picture of the OG band in there somewhere, and, like, playing it over the sound system. Something. Just, once again, these are fan service things that are okay to do.
Yes.
But at the same time, the only thing they got out of that is just that one little dynamic conversation between Rose and Finn. Yeah. But, oh, this place is great. But then she's like, well, why is it great? Do you know what it became great at the cost of? Yeah. And by the end of it, you get, a little social justice where they're like, the little man wins it back. But yeah, they could have done so much more in there, and even just expanding on it. Like, I mean, the little humor scene with BB-8, like they could have expanded more. Like, yeah, we saw more aliens and we saw cool stuff, but they could have done so much more with that.
Yeah, it's a great set piece. It's visual. It's got some good humor into it, but on strength of plot and actual substance to the movie, it doesn't do anything.
Yeah. No, I agree. That scene I did agree, I thought fell a little short because what they were trying to do, and at the end, like, that was my big problem, was like you said, is it at the end that the Benicio del Toro storyline was kind of a moot point. Yeah. And which was unfortunate, and also I need to know why they had him stutter.
Because it's Benicio del Toro, that's what he does. Have you not seen Usual Suspects?
Not in a very long time that I can recall.
It's been a while, but
most of the things I see him in, he does not a stuttering prick like that.
I've been reading, so since the film, I kind of had to avoid it because I didn't see it till Sunday. I didn't see it Thursday night with everybody else. Yeah. And was reading all the reviews. Some are like, love it to death, and like, this is the perfect thing that Star Wars needed to make it fresh again. And then there's others that, completely hated it. And there's this kind of go in between guys like us for a little bit. And I can see both. And I would love to think that this, I do see that it's kind of a refresh. Yeah. But at the same time, it feels very corporate to me. And being an industry person and as a writer and as a creative.
Well, that's why there were so many cute animals. Because Disney said, what can we turn into a plush?
And like I said, that's
so corporate for them to stand out and make money.
There's a lot of individual moments that are very obviously focus tested, but the connective tissue between them is very weak. Yeah. And that's new for the franchise. Like, Force Awakens had that connective tissue. The original trilogy had that connective tissue. This one seemed very Disney. Very, we want to market these things. We want to be able to sell art books. We want to be able to sell dolls. We want to be able to sell toys. We want to sell plush toys of, all these little adorable things.
So with that said, I want to say that this is maybe a bridge that gap film. And we are obviously going to get a very Disney-esque film for the next one. I think that's what we're going to get.
Well, we might not.
So I'm hoping and Disney does pretty good films, so I'm hoping the next one will be a lot better. This was just, they had to kind of move from the past into the now, which they really hit over the head.
By next one, do you mean the Han Solo movie, or do you mean Episode 9?
Episode 9.
Episode 9.
But I also think Han Solo will be moving past it too, because these solo movies are in their what they're trying to build up. Yeah.
Episode
where
9
they
is
have to
gonna-
kind of be in the wheelhouse is these films.
Episode 9 is going to be done by J.J. Abrams again, who did Force Awakened, and the only thing he's wanted to do with his life is make Star Wars movies. So
Because
it
he-
might hew back towards the original.
And as I tell, J.J. Abrams is one of those creators that at least listens to his fan base. He doesn't do what they want them to do, but he'll listen.
As a Star Trek fan, I politely disagree.
I will take that. Honestly, Star Trek and me, we don't really care.
I enjoyed the Star Trek films that he did.
You can enjoy them, but they're bad Star Trek films.
Oh, here comes Giano. All right, guys. Any last words on The Last Jedi? Because I know that our friends are out there chilling. Literally.
It's not Hoth out there or nothing. They're
They
fine.
other like they're having a great time. Let's go for another.
Any other moments? Because there's.
Yes, what does
I could
pork
go
taste
for a while on
like?
this, but I think a lot of people
Oh,
have already
pork
kind of put
nuggets.
out.
Are we
there.
having pork nuggets for dinner?
Did you not enjoy that scene?
I love
So
it.
were you okay with the porgs when they finally introduced it? I thought it was cute.
I mean, they were again very marketable, very.
I
Disney.
thought it
Yeah.
was overdone a touch because a little too much. Because
Same with the random island inhabitants that show up halfway through the film
the fish
with
heads?
no further evidence.
yeah,
The frog people.
Yeah, the frog people who just
That
are
was
randomly
weird.
there.
Yeah. That was
After
awkward.
what, 20, 30 minutes of them being on the island with
Very
no
true.
evidence of their existence?
And then the blue milk is that? So is that the
Green
origin of the
milk!
blue- Green. That was green.
Greenish
Milk?
blue.
it was green, referencing the blue.
Yeah.
That was the.
That was a reference back to the
Okay.
old Mos Eisley stuff.
That was crotchety old Luke Skywalker. I was fine with that.
I love
like
crotchety
said,
old Luke.
Yeah. Like I said, I don't have any huge problems with the whole Jedi training sequence, other than, like I said, the random island inhabitants that show up halfway through the sequence.
Yeah.
Now, like, see, that's where I need more. I need to know more about Luke. Like, why was Luke there? And I understand. And of course, we have Kylo's version of the murder attempt, and then we have Luke's version of the mercy killing. But I'm sure the truth lies somewhere in the middle.
What happened to the Knights of Ren? All of that was.
Well, that's really
part of
easy.
all
Those
that.
are the chitlins that he ran away with.
Yeah, but where are they?
Well, dead.
There's a lot of holes, man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's like
Or the big one that I'm just going to put there, the Snoke thing.
Snoke, fucking Snoke.
Like, come on.
I love how he died though. That was. Cool.
I don't, because they already established that people don't die that way in the Star Wars universe.
yeah, they do.
No, Darth Maul did not die. He got spider legs and ran away. Because he just got cut in half.
Are we talking about Clone Wars?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're talking about how he got cut
Part.
in half. And last time I checked,
Clone
yeah,
Wars
there's
is-
some good stuff down
Clone Wars-
there, but vital organs are from the waist up.
Clone Wars is canon. And he showed up on Rebels too. So
Yeah,
Rebels is
he
canon.
had
It
spider
didn't
legs.
look like
into it.
it should have only been like half though. But then when you saw there was different segments of the body elsewhere. Like
So
It
he had
also
a
didn't
couple
make
of
other
different lower
sense.
bodies in Clone Wars. So that's why he
no,
starts off with
the
the spider
Snoke body,
thing.
the death.
Oh,
No,
And
there
when you
was-
saw other shots of it after that end sequence and they're battling together,
yeah.
how good were those Praetorian guys though? I like the Praetorian guys. The red. Oh, we
Question.
have Giano.
I have
out
a
here.
question for you guys. There's an opinion about Snoke going around when people are paying attention to a lot of the accoutrement that he has, and one of them is they noticed one of the rings has the same symbol as one of the four sages that started the Galactic Republic. What's your opinion on that?
I heard
prospects.
people theorizing that he was Darth Plagueis or whatever. The Sith
I've
that
heard
can
he's Jar
regenerate-
Jar Binks. I've heard so many Snoke theories. I don't care. I want.
They've
to
been
know.
snoked.
Ah,
Yeah.
no, get
I
out.
did it. But no, I
And
think,
then you have the aftermath books, which say, "Oh, they're going to explain how the First Order rises." Has nothing to do with Snoke.
and on top of it, in Force Awakens, they very clearly set out to point out that Snoke is not Sith nor Jedi.
Yeah.
But in this one, he is sure as fuck Force adept.
Yeah.
And last time I checked, Force lightning is a dark side trait.
So it is possible to have Force affinity and have skill in the Force and not be strict Jedi or Sith. Those are like religions compared. You know,
Well, yeah, is he leftover Bond too?
I mean, it's like how many dark side Force wielders we had, and even in like actual canon, who were not Sith because you only have two Sith.
Which is actually something I'm looking forward to them doing, because one angle I've heard is that maybe they're trying to push Star Wars into the gray area. Like Luke said, it's time for the Jedi to die.
Yeah, there was a lot of speculation that his discussion of that and all the talk about the Jedi ending was that
Assigning
Luke
yourself.
was going to kind of go to a gray area and bring Rey along with it. I'm not sure that's how it's going to go, because the original expanded universe tried doing that, and it didn't go well for anyone involved.
But Rey, so far, I think that's why they might have set her up with that one, the crossing to the dark side so easily, scaring Luke, but coming right back.
Yeah.
I think they're trying to set that up as far as that's the direction they want to go in, they can. Because, I mean, that is something I've always thought was interesting. As we said, Rebels, they introduced that character, the Bond, too, that essentially says, I don't act unless I'm acted upon, so therefore I am neutral. And he just lets the Star Wars universe balance itself. So, I mean, curious with the direction they're going to go, but I felt like this movie just gave us so much more story they could tell.
Yeah.
Which I'm okay with that.
I'm fine with them giving you more story to tell, but the story you're telling still has to be relatively self-contained and self-sustaining, and I don't think this movie was.
And I agree with that this movie requires so much more back-end story. Like, now, which is ironic, I've seen so many non-Star Wars fans, or people that never watch Star Wars, say, this is the movie that got me into Star Wars. And I'm like, how in the flying fuck did that happen?
I have one last question to put towards you guys, actually. Because I mentioned a lot of things being left on the cutting room floor, a lot of things not being acted upon, although they could have been or should have been or cut off. Do you think that this Star Wars film is falling under the same meta that a lot of films this year have, where they give you just enough and then save it all for the DVD for the deleted scenes, like they've been doing with a lot of DC films?
I don't think
and
there's
Marvel
a bunch
films.
that they're going to give us. I think they gave it to us all.
No, things got cut because there's
The movie was
this.
long.
Yeah, this movie I think was the longest one.
2.5.
Yeah, it's about 2.5 hours.
But I don't think
A New Hope was 90 minutes.
I think Force was 2:45 or something like that. 2:40.
But I mean, it's 2.5 hours is about the longest that they'll let a movie push these days. And no matter what gets cut from the movie, they want it shorter than that because they're apparently very, very concerned that people are just going to walk out in the middle of the film and that's going to be bad for it. I don't quite follow that logic, but that's what they say.
I'm more worried that people wouldn't go, not walk out. Like, who walks out? Unless the movie is absolute dreck.
Yeah.
But if it's a movie that you really, Star Wars, it's very few films have done it. You've got stuff like Godfather, you've got stuff like Patton that have gone into the 3-hour realm. They tend not to be good mass market approaches for building a new franchise, but for an existing franchise, I think people would sit in their chair for a 3-hour Star Wars movie.
Oh,
Yeah.
definitely.
And I don't think
It
they're
was
saving
worth
this
sitting
for the
for.
DVD
Yeah.
to force the sales to
No.
get additional content.
I don't think
gave
they
us
do that
everything.
because Disney is very conscious, I would believe, of critical reaction to things because you have to remember outside of their whole involvement with Star Wars, they're also involved in Marvel and they're also have their ongoing thing with DC, and DC has gotten nothing but dragged over the rails for how critically bad their movies have been, even though they're making money.
Yeah.
To the point where even though they're making money, they are drastically realigning how those films are working because of how bad the reviews have been.
Good thing they have Flashpoint.
All right. Well, to speed things along, because we still have those people outside in the cold, real quick, what do you want to see happen in the next film? With what we have, with where we got left off,
I just need more
I feel
information.
it's kind of rebooted.
I
Do
don't
you feel that they rebooted now?
No,
That it's
no.
gonna be...
I don't think they rebooted at all. I felt like they just set the perpetual motion of this is what this story does. That we're at the bottom, it's going to work its way up, and it's going to fall back down. But at the same time, I need to know more information of how they got to this point. Like, I just want to know more. That way I have a reason to feel vested besides the fact it's just Star Wars. I mean, if we go back to the point, if this was a very first movie for a franchise, there's just so many questions that you're going to be like, God, do I even care to find out all this? But since we're already invested, we're theorizing and speculating. Which, I mean, if that's what they were going for, they're getting people talking about it, which, I mean, that's good.
Yeah.
So either way, I just want more information.
All right.
That's all I want.
See why?
I could give the really pandering answer that I want the next episode to open with Luke waking up, realizing it's all a bad dream, and it start with an adaptation of the Thrawn trilogy.
All right, y'all. That's been our review of it. Hopefully, I can get Gianna once he sees it to throw one down for us. And yes, we're getting a thumbs up. Cool. Again, I'm still in the in between. I'm in the upside down. I don't know what to think yet.
Like I said, for all I rag on it, I have
I
problems
can
with
see
it.
the.
but I was
I
able
see
to
it very
enjoy
corporate.
it.
It's a very corporate film to me.
Better than Phantom Menace.
Yeah.
Low bar, but yes.
Hey,
All right, guys.
Star Wars
Let us know
universe.
what you think in the comments below. Thanks, y'all.